Rain lashed against the cracked pavement as Emma Rodriguez pulled her 5-year-old daughter Lily closer to her chest. They'd been standing on that unfamiliar street corner for nearly an hour. No umbrella, no plan, and nowhere to go. The grocery bags at her feet held everything they owned now, their lives reduced to trash bags that still smelled faintly of the house they'd just been thrown out of. Only 3 hours earlier, she'd been living with her late husband's family, people who had once called her daughter, who had toasted her at her wedding, who had promised she'd never be alone. But when grief turned cold, their kindness vanished. Now with $43 in her pocket and a child who didn't understand why home wasn't theirs anymore, Emma's hands trembled, not from the cold, but from disbelief. Yet as she watched the sunset burn through the storm clouds, a memory surfaced. Her mother's voice talking about an old family farmhouse on the outskirts of town. A place everyone said was worthless, falling apart, a relic. But in that moment, it became her only hope. She didn't know it yet, but that decision, to return to a forgotten house, would uncover a secret that had waited decades to be found. Earlier that day, Emma had been living a quiet, fragile routine. Wake before dawn, make breakfast for her husband's family, walk Lily to kindergarten, then take the early bus to the grocery store for her cashier shift. She'd saved every penny, hiding a few crumpled bills in a jewelry box, dreaming of the day she could afford a place of her own. But when she came home that afternoon, all her belongings were on the porch. Her mother-in-law, Helena, stood in the doorway, her arms crossed like a queen addressing a peasant. "You've stayed long enough, Emma," she said, voice cold as glass. "Diego's been gone 2 years. You need to move on." Behind her, Diego's brother Marcus and sister Veronica stood with folded arms, offering nothing but judgment. Emma had begged, not for charity but for time, but Helena didn't waver. "You've taken advantage of our kindness long enough," she said, her tone final. When Emma asked where she should go, Veronica smirked and muttered, "Maybe you should have thought about that before marrying into a family you couldn't afford." That was the last thing she heard before the door slammed shut. Emma didn't scream. She didn't cry, not yet. She picked up the bags, took Lily's hand, and walked away without looking back. Pride was the only thing keeping her upright as the storm rolled in. By the time she reached the edge of town, the rain was falling hard. That's when she remembered her mother's story about her grandfather's old farmhouse, long abandoned. Long ignored, but technically still hers. The address was hazy in her memory, but she found a taxi driver willing to take her for nearly everything she had left. 20 minutes later, headlights cut through sheets of rain and revealed the house. It looked like something out of a ghost story. The paint was gone, the porch sagged, and the windows were either broken or boarded up. Vines strangled the sides of the house, crawling up toward a roof that bowed under decades of neglect. The driver hesitated. "You sure you want to stay here?" Emma nodded, her voice small but steady. "It's home." The door gave way under one desperate shove. Inside it was silent, stale, and dark, the kind of darkness that feels heavy, like it's watching you. Emma swept her flashlight across the room. Dust hung in the air like fog. Furniture stood beneath grey sheets, the remains of a life long gone. Lily clung to her leg, eyes wide. But there in the corner was an old wood stove, and by some miracle dry firewood stacked beside it. Emma coaxed a flame to life, her hands shaking, her thumb blistering from the effort. But when that fire caught, warm, real, and alive, something inside her shifted. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of safety. And as Lily drifted to sleep beside her, Emma stared at the firelight and made a silent promise they would survive. No matter what it took, days turned into weeks. Emma scrubbed, swept, patched what she could, and closed off what she couldn't. The kitchen sink still ran rust-colored water, but at least it ran. She made a game of cleaning, calling it the Great Adventure House for Lily. She walked nearly 7 miles into town every few days, searching for work until a diner owner finally hired her to wait tables. The job paid little, but the tips helped, and the owner lent her a beat-up bicycle for the commute. Each night Emma came home exhausted, her hands cracked, her feet raw, but she'd smile anyway, tucking Lily into bed beside the wood stove. As the seasons shifted, so did the house. It began to feel alive again, less haunted, more hopeful, and for the first time in a long time, so did she. But she avoided the basement. There was something about it, a heavy smell, a dampness that seemed to breathe. Once she'd gone down to look and found only darkness and shadows. Whatever was down there, she told herself, could wait. Winter arrived with teeth. That night, the storm outside sounded like the sky was splitting open. Lightning flashed through the cracks in the boarded windows. Wind screamed through the eaves. Emma and Lily huddled together near the fire. But then, beneath the thunder, came another sound. A deep grinding groan from below. Then a crash. Emma grabbed her flashlight and descended the basement stairs, her heart pounding in her throat. The smell hit first, wet stone, rot, something old. The storm must have loosened something, she thought. When her light hit the far wall, she froze. A section of bricks had fallen, exposing a dark cavity behind it. The wall wasn't solid, it was hiding something. Emma hesitated, then began pulling at the bricks one by one until she could crawl through. On the other side was a small hidden room, and inside that room was an old steel safe. Heavy, dust-caked, beautiful. Her breath caught as she turned the handle, expecting it to be locked. But it opened. The flashlight beam illuminated stacks of papers, small leather pouches and coins, gold coins, glinting like stars in the dark. For a long time, Emma just stared. The storm roared above her, but down here, time had stopped. By dawn, Emma was still at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and coins. The documents bore her grandfather's name, Robert Mitchell. Stock certificates from a mining company. Land deeds, legal contracts dating back to the 1940s. The coins, gold, real gold, were stamped with dates from the late 1800s. She pulled out her phone, typed in the company's name, Rocky Mountain Mining Consortium. And there it was, still operating, still worth hundreds of millions. Emma sat back, breathless. Her grandfather hadn't been poor. He'd been rich, secretly rich. Within weeks, a lawyer named Patricia Chen confirmed what Emma barely dared believe. The shares were real and still valid. After legal verification and corporate tracing, the final report came in. Emma's inheritance was worth $257 million. When Patricia told her the number, Emma couldn't speak. She just sat there. The same woman who'd once counted coins to buy soup, now holding wealth beyond comprehension. Her grandfather's secret had slept beneath that house for 60 years, waiting for the one person who needed it most. When the money hit her account, Emma didn't throw a party. She didn't post or brag. She sat in silence, staring at the farmhouse walls that had once felt like a prison and now felt like a miracle. Her first call was to her lawyer, to pay her generously. Her second was to the local church, an anonymous donation big enough to feed families for a decade. And her third was to a contractor, to rebuild the farmhouse exactly as her grandfather had left it. When her husband's family eventually found out, through whispers and rumors, they came to her door. Desperate, Helena stood on the porch, trembling with rage. "You owe us! Diego's daughter deserves a share." Emma looked at her calmly. "You threw me out with a child and $43 to my name," she said. "You told me to figure out my own life, so I did." And with that she closed the door. There was no shouting, no revenge, just peace. Because, for the first time, Emma didn't need their approval. She didn't need anything from them ever again. Years passed. The farmhouse was restored, gleaming white again under the sun. Lily grew up strong, kind, and grateful. Together, they built a foundation to help widows and single mothers, turning Emma's pain into purpose. One day, when Lily was 13, Emma brought her to the basement, now renovated, clean and warm. Behind a pane of glass, she'd preserved the old safe, exactly as she'd found it. "Your great-grandfather left us this," Emma said softly. "But the real gift wasn't money. It was proof that we're stronger than we think." When word of Emma's story finally spread, the widow cast out the hidden fortune, the poetic justice. People called it luck, but those who knew her understood the truth. The gold hadn't saved her. Courage did. The house had given her shelter, yes, but it was her strength that built a life. And if you've listened this far, maybe you believe in that kind of strength too. So if Emma's story touched you, tap that like button, share where you're listening from, and subscribe for more stories that remind us. Sometimes the greatest treasures are buried not beneath floors or walls, but within the people strong enough to keep standing when the world falls apart.